Hey, Jaden Fox here, and today we're talking about what do you do with targeted immunotherapy when you've got fluctuations in your serotonin or dopamine. Now, there's a couple reasons where this could occur. One of them is if you're going along and you've been doing it for a while and you find that your dopamine or serotonin or whatever is seems to be getting lower and lower. It's like whatever you're taking is becoming less effective. Then what you can do is quite simply change to a different brand. Sometimes that makes a difference. It's like your body gets kind of oversaturated, or it's like, I don't necessarily want this anymore. It becomes less effective. You can change brands, or you can change to a different style. So I was originally on plain tyrosine, and then I went to N-acetyltyrosine, and that was a change. And it may have been about a year before I did one, and then I noticed it was starting to be less effective, and so I switched to another one. You can also just keep increasing the dose, but another thing you can do is switch. So that's one thing, and if you're going on for an extended period of time, what it probably means is that the thing that Julia Ross would talk about in the mood cure is that it's something else is going on behind the scenes, and just taking the amino acids is not rebalancing your system. So that's one little note, and we're going to address that in the second part here. But two reasons why it could fluctuate. One, because you're going to transition from this system to another system, or that you've actually reached the end of this. Your body is starting to produce an increasing amount of serotonin or increasing amount of dopamine, and you want to then start lowering your dose down. And how do you do that? Like, how do you know what's going on? And I want to show you how I do that today. Or how do you start lowering or lowering or increasing your dose if you're going to transition from immunotherapy into a Walsh or Pfeiffer protocol where you're adding zinc, B6, SAMe, zinc, like I said, glutathione, you're adding a host of other things, and you're seeking to address what else could be going on. And let me just kind of give you, if this is new to you, this started coming out, well, it's been going on since the 70s, the research that Walsh and Pfeiffer have been doing. And what they had determined is that after assessing about 20 to 30,000 different people and doing a lot of blood tests to figure out what's going on behind the scenes and what's causing the serotonin, dopamine, GABA to be going up or down. And the patterns that they found were actually quite startling. And they found in schizophrenia and in depression, there were these 6 core big patterns and a couple smaller patterns. And those big patterns, they started to call those biotypes, or Walsh calls those biotypes, is being overmethylated or also folate deficiency, undermethylated. You can have something called pyrrole disorder, copper overload. Basically, it's toxic metals, but it's focusing on copper. And if you have pyrrole, you may also have copper. They kind of flip back and forth. Toxic overload in other areas, typically metals, but doesn't necessarily have to be. Or even for a small percentage of people, gluten intolerance will cause schizophrenic kind of behaviors and causing dopamine and serotonin to go all over the map. So let's say that you've been working with amino acid therapy and you've found that that's not working over an extended period of time. What do? Well, you can begin to get testing for the Walsh-Pfeiffer and find out what's actually going on with what's causing it, what's behind the scene. If it's not balancing itself out, what else is going on? And finding out what your methylation levels are, whether you have pyrrole, your metals, and if you're gluten intolerant, can be like the next step in handling it. And they've got a lot of background in resolving cases. I think it's as high as 80% in some cases of people who have just fluctuations in serotonin, dopamine, depression, schizophrenia, the host of other things going on that you probably are seeking or have been resolving or attempting to resolve using amino acid therapy. So if you have been using amino acid therapy and you're beginning to transition into the Walsh method, what you're going to find is that all of a sudden the dosages that you used to be taking are going to be like, woo, way too much. So you end up getting an overdose. So what happens is your body, if your body's used to producing this much serotonin, and then you find out that you're low, you've got a methylation issue, and you start to handle methylation, now your body starts producing more, and you find out that you're low B6, and you start to add B6, and your body produces even more serotonin. The dose that you used to be taking is now going to be too much. What do you do during that transitionary period, which can be months, 2, 3, 4 months, as the Walsh-Pfeiffer protocol, as your body readapts to and rebalances itself out. And it depends on whether you have pyrrole disorder. That can go very quickly, a week, 2, 3. If it's a methylation issue and some of the other ones, then that could take significantly longer. What do you do in the meantime? So here's what you do in the meantime. Let me turn off that. So what I've done is I used to have a set dose. And for me, my set dose here was about 150 milligrams of L-tryptophan. So I was taking 150 milligrams. And as soon as I started doing the Walsh-Pfeiffer protocol, all of a sudden my body started generating more of its own, and that was too much. And so I'm still taking 150, but now what's happening is it's making my symptoms appear to be worse because I'm adding too much of the amino acids. So what did I do? Well, I reduced the amount of amino acids that I took, but how do you know how much to take? So here's what I did, and you can see on my screen a little packet. So rather than just having the one packet of 150, what I ended up doing was I made a variety of little packets at different dose ranges. I did this one. I'm very sensitive to tryptophan, so what I did was I made it in 5 milligram doses. And so what I do is there's a couple ways to do it. One, you can do it the trial and error method, and that's to recognize that, okay, well, I took this and it's too much. So the next time I'm going to take a lower. I'll take 5 lower. That's one way of doing it. The other way you can do it is I recognize that when I put one of these pills on my tongue, my body can tell. Like it feels like when I get the right dose and I put the pill on my tongue, it feels light. It feels like, ooh, my body's happy. It's like, yeah, that's the right one. When I put the one that's too heavy or too light or too much or too little on my tongue, it's like, ugh, my body just is like, no, I don't want that. Or you can also use muscle testing. If you're familiar with muscle testing, you can do that. You can ask your body, okay, well, which one of these do you want? If you're very intuitive, your body may, like my body just looks at, like right now, my body's looking at this one. It's like, that's the dose my body knows it wants. So there's a variety of ways that you can tell which one to take. And what I even have learned to do is instead of like putting them all on my tongue, like I might get a sense that it's somewhere between this dose and it's this dose, and it's still in the bag. I have them in the little bags, but I'll pinch the pill towards the top of the bag and I'll set it on my tongue and I'll feel what it's like, body, how do you like this one? Body, how do you like this one? And this one feels lighter. So this is the one that I would take at my next dose. So that's one unusual way that I do it. And so I just have a range of doses and then I let my body choose, or I look at the pattern. after a while, you start to notice there's certain patterns. Certain times of the day, your body may naturally want more. Certain times of the day, your body may want less. So there's a variety of ways. But the concept is just that you're going to make a range of different doses, and then you have something to choose from. Now, in tryptophan, or in my dopamine dosage, I have the N-acetyltyrosine and L-phenylalanine. And I put those together in the same pill. And I have another video where I've shown you how I measure that and how I calculate that. Now, I notice for this, I'm not as sensitive as I am for the tryptophan. So for here, instead of doing 5 milligrams apart, I'm doing 10 milligrams apart. So I have the 100 to 109, the 110 to 119, 120 to 129, 130 to 139. And again, I do the same thing. I'll ask my body which one, or I'll put this on my tongue. And I'll just see, oh, is that the one? And just see what my body's reaction to that is. So those are some of the different ways that you can handle when your dopamine or serotonin are fluctuating. GABA typically is more stable, or body doesn't seem as sensitive to it. Like I can have way more or way less GABA, and it's not like, ah! Whereas serotonin and dopamine, if I have too much or too little, I feel it, I notice it, and it affects my performance or just my general feeling goodness or lack of feeling goodness. So just let your body choose. Piece of cake.